Resuming debate, the honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to discuss how our government's budget will benefit rural Canada. I am very fortunate, Mr. Speaker, to chair a very strong Rural Caucus that is working hard to identify key issues and challenges that exist in rural Canada and lobby on behalf of those issues. And our caucus has identified three key issues that we feel are representative of rural Canada. The first issue being digital infrastructure, whether it's cellular or internet, broadband internet. The second being funding, dedicated funding towards small rural communities. And thirdly, economic investment and resources towards small rural communities. Mr. Speaker, there's a transformation that is happening in our society today that is synonymous with the transformation that happened in the late 1800s as we transitioned from the first wave of the Industrial Revolution to the second wave of the Industrial Revolution. And today we're going from the third wave to the fourth wave. And just as that transformation was, at that time, that transition was a highly automated transition, it is as well today, where technology and automation are eliminating jobs far more quickly than it's creating them. The catalyst at that time to drive entrepreneurialism was the national dream, the railroad. It connected our towns, it connected our communities, our provinces, our country to nations across the world. It increased the level of productivity and it increased accessibility for our small entrepreneurs to be able to sell their products and services beyond their towns and villages. We need a catalyst today that is similar to that. And to me, digital infrastructure and economic development are those two catalysts. Digital infrastructure, whether it's providing rural families with access, their children access to the internet so that they can do their homework, or whether it's medicine being delivered through telemedicine facilities in remote regions, or once again for our small entrepreneurs to be able to do their business that goes beyond their front door. And I've traveled a lot in my riding and have visited many very innovative, creative individuals in the riding, and they're very passionate. They're very focused on what they do. But they're not necessarily all very good at selling or marketing or branding themselves or dealing with finance. And that's why we really need to be able to provide enterprise facilitation type services, innovation hubs, incubation hubs, clusters to our entrepreneurs so that they can, one, overcome the intimidation of starting their business, or towards providing the training and skills that they don't necessarily have, whether it is marketing, sales, or finance. Mr. Speaker, our government is listening to individuals like Adrian Ellis, or organizations like Eastern Ontario Regional Network, or the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, and we have delivered $500 million towards digital infrastructure that all of these organizations and individuals have been clamoring for, to be able to deliver their products and services to a market far broader than just hanging a shingle on their door. Our government is listening, and our government is getting the job done by investing $800 million into innovation centers, clusters, and incubation hubs so that we can provide those skills training, those facilitation services that so many of our entrepreneurs in local and rural areas desperately need. We're also providing $70 million investment to agricultural research and innovation. We're providing innovation funds for forestry, for mining, for many other sectors that will benefit in rural areas of our country, that will generate jobs, generate growth for our rural communities. Mr. Speaker, there are also tremendous infrastructure funding challenges that exist in rural areas. The application process through the Small Community Fund is daunting. And the Small Community Fund today is dedicated towards communities that have 100,000, municipalities that have 100,000 people or less. Well, in Canada, there are only 50 communities that have more than 100,000 people. There are close to 5,000 communities that have less than 100,000 people. How does a community of 1,000 people and less compete with a community of 100,000 people? One of the challenges around the application process is that these communities they don't have the internal resources to fill out these complex applications, and they don't have the financial resources to be able to hire professional fund or grant writers to be able to brand these resources. Mr. Speaker, also I forgot to mention at the very beginning, I'll be splitting my time with the member from Ottawa South. I apologize for that. Mr. Speaker, so what our government once again is listening to mayors like Bernice Jenkins when they say, we're having problems putting our asset management plan together. So we're dedicating $50 million towards asset management plans, the generation of asset management plans, so that it creates a level playing field for our small municipalities to be able to fill out these funding applications and once again be able to communicate the need that they have, because at the end of the day, these applications or these grants are awarded based on perceived need. Well, if you can't brand that need, well, guess what? Your need's not going to be perceived to be as high as someone who can brand that need. Another part of the small community fund is the third. A third municipalities pay, a third the provinces pay, and a third the federal government pays. Well, that's, once again, very difficult for small rural communities that have had highways downloaded to them, like the mayor of Hastings Highlands, Vivian Bloom, where they've got a piece of Highway 62 that they had to actually reject the funding that they had received on the small community fund because they couldn't afford the third. Right? Well, our government under this budget is going to be relaxing that criteria that once again, dependent upon the financial situation of a municipality and the need to get that project done, our government is going to be able to assist them in providing a greater portion of that funding. Also, the problem that we have with being shovel-ready. Well, most communities, once again, Deseronto and Mayor Norm Clark needs to do a $7 million expansion to their plant, water plants. Well, they need to generate a $700,000 report just to be shovel-ready. That's more than their whole budget. So once again, our government has, in this budget, is relaxing that requirement. Mr. Speaker, there are so many aspects of this budget that will benefit rural Canada. The Canada Child Benefit, the middle class tax cut, the increase in the guaranteed income supplement. My riding has one of the highest child poverty rates in the province. It has the second highest food insecurity rate in the province, and it has one of the highest unemployment rates, right? We need to put more money in the pockets of those who need it the most. And you know what happens when we do that? They spend it. They spend it in our local communities that benefit our small businesses, that help to create jobs, that help to create growth. Mr. Speaker, if we are not going to invest, if we do not trust that Canadians have the resourcefulness and that are going to be hardworking enough to invest in them, to give them the assurance that we trust them and invest in them, then who is going to? Right? If the government of Canada does not believe in Canadians, then who's going to believe in Canadians? Now is the time to invest in Canada. The interest rates are low. The debt to GDP rate is low. We need to invest in Canadians today to create the future jobs that will grow our communities and provide that income level to support our families. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the honourable member for an excellent speech. I'm very supportive of the rural internet funding and the infrastructure funding that was put towards that, as well as the research and innovation. But as the co-chair for Parliamentary Rail Caucus, I was disappointed when I saw the budget and saw that, the high-performance rail from the Southwest Ontario corridor to Quebec, which is such a priority and would have been such a help in terms of addressing climate change, was not even funded. There was only money for a study. So I wonder if the member could comment on why that was left out.
The honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
I would like to thank the member for her question. And like her, I agree that the importance of rail is definitely there. And once again, do you just throw money out there and just hope that it creates this field of dreams? No. You have to do the reports. You have to bring the evidence and the data to support the investment, right? We are a growth agenda government, right? So if you don't have the data, if you don't have if you can't quantify what growth is going to result from that investment, then the investment isn't worth making. Any business is going to do the same thing. So our government is putting the money into studying exactly what we need to have in place, the level of investment that's really going to bring about the change that is necessary to increase rail, to increase the amount of times, the scheduled times that rail travels, and to move people quicker from one part of the country to the other part of the country so that we can increase that productivity and we can increase the growth in our economy. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a former mayor, I really appreciate a lot of the comments that you've made this morning in terms of the needs. Certainly we need a different formula in municipalities. That one-third, one-third, one-third is really difficult for small communities. Those communities also do need money up front so they can actually be shovel-ready with their projects. A lot of them can't afford engineering, the cost of engineering studies to be shovel-ready. I also think we need to expand our basic definition of infrastructure now. Traditionally, it's always been sewer, water, roads, and storm drains. And I think we need to be adding dark fiber, high-speed internet as a basic piece of infrastructure in all of our communities moving forward. Really important, particularly to rural areas. And also, I think we need to move to multi-year funding so you can actually do some planning. So, interested in the members' thoughts on adding multi-year funding and dark fiber to your list of priorities.
Honourable member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Once again, I thank the member for the excellent question. I couldn't agree more. I think that as part of the funding formula, we really need to look at whenever there's an infrastructure project that's being done, when a road is being, for example, dug up, the fiber, or at least the conduit for fiber should be laid when that road is being done. And once again, I mean, you make a great point. We need that long-term funding, and that's why, this $500 million over 5 years does give that sustained funding. Do we need more? Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I think our government recognizes that. It's the highest investment that's been made in broadband internet as a government, and I think that moving forward we will continue to make those investments because once again we recognize that the growth is there. If you invest, this technology is the catalyst. If we're going to compete in this highly technological, highly globalized, competitive world, we need to have the infrastructure in place that is going to create a level playing ground for everyone to benefit and for everyone to bring their products and services. Canadians are so innovative and creative that we just need to give them the tools to allow that entrepreneurial spirit that exists in all of us to explode, just as it did back in the late 1800s when all of our towns and cities were boomed because of the railroad. Thank you for the question.
Reprise du débat, l'honorable